So today I decided to make a short commentary and analysis video about one of the latest work from Chris Kepi, who is a former US Army infantryman and who is the protagonist of the famous, very popular channel Task and Purpose. We are talking about his video, which is called I went to the front line of Ukraine's invasion into Russia, with the title and thumbnail, What It's Really Like. Which means that he is implying that his intention is to provide real, truthful information about how it is on the ground there for real. So, as you probably already understand by my ironic tone, I have some issues about how objective and truthful some of the things he's saying in his video are. And, well, let's get straight into it.
Standing in the ruins, I was struck by an uncomfortable realization. I felt that I belonged here, witnessing something bigger than myself. I could feel now that I was on the frontier, the meeting point of two systems colliding. On the one side, in the east, Putin's authoritarian rule. On the other side, in the west, a society fighting for values that couldn't be more different. And from where I stood, it seemed that this fundamental difference could unfortunately only be resolved through violence.
Wow! I would be laughing so hard right now if the situation wouldn't be so sad and tragic. I mean, reducing very complex conflict to the point of authoritarian bad regime of evil goblins versus amazing people of freedom with great values, probably values of democracy, of course nothing authoritarian, no LGBTQ+, feminism and all of this. I imagine that's what a guy from Task and Purpose implying. So basically that it's a fight of a good versus evil. And well, I have a couple of things to comment on here. Talking about authoritarian regime. Well, did you know that in Ukraine, basically right now, all of the opposition political parties are prohibited. In Ukraine right now, there are no presidential elections. All the men from 18 to 60 years old are prohibited to leave the country. A lot still left, that's why you in the West, if you live in Europe, you can often see Ukrainian-speaking guys around, because they managed to escape due to bribery, because Ukraine, as well as Russia, right now looks like even more than Russia, is a corrupted country. So, and a cherry on top of the cake of how democratic right now and free the Ukraine is, basically, right now they are catching young guys walking on the street, trying to buy groceries or whatever. They grabbing them, kidnapping them, pushing into their cars. I mean, who are grabbing them, you think, kind of criminals? No, it's a military service people who grabbing the young guys to send them to war, to trenches. They will receive, in the best case, some training of a month or even less. And these young people, without having a clue how to be a professional soldier, almost without it, they basically destined to die or to lose a hand or a leg, and maybe if they're lucky, survive. That's why you're constantly hearing the reports about how they are lacking manpower. And that's why Blinken is trying to push a Ukrainian president to start conscripting from 18 years old, because right now I think it's from 25. Just check a few videos that I already shown in my channel.
Ганьба поліції! Ганьба! Ганьба поліції! Ганьба! Спокою. Ми його затримуємо. Ви що, мужики? Успокойся. Відійди! Ти чого, фонаря?
So that is how democratic and how free Ukraine is. You better be a judge by yourself, comparing this with Russia, and find some differences. I don't know. Right now, to me, it looks like Russia is even more democratic than Ukraine. I mean, trust me, I'm not a fan of the political regime in Russia at all, like at all. But I have to say, at least currently, before Russia really make this global mobilization for all men, like Ukraine does, it looks like Ukraine is less democratic than Russia. And about another aspect, maybe this guy means that Ukrainians was born with these democratic European values about being tolerant, feminist, LGBTQ lovers and things like that. And well, I have something to say you about this because it happened that I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian. And until my 20s, I spent almost every summer in central Ukraine, in Kyiv and surroundings. And I can assure you, an average Ukrainian, and in general, if we generalize very much, which of course there are always some exceptions, but generally speaking, it's people with the same mentality as Russian, which means mostly they are deeply patriarchal, they are quite sexist society, absolutely non-feminist, and definitely more lenient toward the homophobic side than of the tolerant side. Right now in Ukraine, of course, they try to promote that, yes, we are so tolerant and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. But this is for political reasoning. If you will go to the random town and village of Ukraine, it will be exactly same kind of mentality like in Russia. So whatever this guy is saying about the amazing correct values of Ukrainians fighting versus authoritarian horrible values of Russia and Putin, it's basically a political narrative. And I liked very much how this kind of thing was summarized by the ex-senior UK Navy officer and military strategy specialist Stephen Jeremy.
I mean, if you want to summarize my sort of thinking in one sentence, is that Russia is operating according to a military strategy, and the West is operating according to a political narrative. So, as far as I can see, that the time has come to. I mean, I'm completely with you. The time has come to stop the killing, and the time has come to as well to accept that actually the whole philosophy and the whole idea of this. This support to Ukraine and its sort of support by the West was misguided. This always was about expansion of NATO. And we chose almost willfully to disregard Russia's legitimate security concerns.
So yeah, it's exactly this. If you are lacking a strategical global view, a strategical purposes of the war, a strategical vision how you want to finish it, I'm talking about the West, then what you can use is political narrative. The question is, until what point? Well, my guess would be until the reality hits you damn hard in your balls, or until we all die in a nuclear fire. Let's hope it's not gonna be this variant.
My wife back home who was worried about me, but I felt like having this opportunity to tell people what is really happening in Ukraine, maybe it was a chance for me to do some good.
Okay, so my guess, if you wanted to tell the truth about what is really happening in Ukraine, you, apart from illegally crossing the Russian border and then bitching about it like, oh, now I will not be able to visit Venezuela or whatever country, which I still don't plan, you probably also would love to visit other side of the front. So it's totally fine, and I think it's also needed to have a full picture to be showing how the Ukrainian soldiers are fighting, what they are thinking, what the people who left to live in this side controlled by Ukrainians are saying, which is, of course, I mean, you have to discount what people are saying by the fear, because they are surrounded by military people. So all of this is amazing, but a part of showing this side, if you want to be objective and show what is really going on, you as well should go to another side of the front line and, for example, to make the same kind of big trip across the front line guided by Russian elite troops, not only by Ukrainian, talking to Russian soldiers, talking about their own motivation, why they are fighting, talking to the normal people who live in the territories that are controlled by Russians, and let them tell their own version of the truth. And then you can analyze, compare, and even tweak it to the side that you feel aligned to, which is, of course, the main Western narrative side and the Ukrainian side, but at least you would have made an attempt to be objective. But just being in the Ukrainian side of things, talking to the most motivated soldiers of them and representing it like you're showing what is really going on, well, I mean, I would take it with a pinch of salt. I think that's the expression.
We're going and talking to different people, different homes, and we're dropping off things like insulin for people who have diabetes. Russia's saying that they're going through here, people destroying homes. They're claiming that they're not. That's part of the reason why they, I think, want an American journalist here, is because they want to get their side of the story out.
The highlights from the Russian news, where Russian public person, state person said that here in the center of the Suja, this is the concentrational camp, detaining center, where people are being tortured, killed.
Oh yeah, like if the Ukrainian soldiers or whatever soldiers indeed would admit to a journalist, like, yeah, there have been a couple of tortures and a few rapes. Nah, that's not funny and ridiculous. And I hate to break it for you, but in a conflict of this scale, where among two sides there have been hundreds of thousands deaths, unfortunately, violence, tortures, and are inevitable. War crimes in wars of these scales are inevitable, and they are inevitable from both sides. So if you try to portray the Ukrainians like these white angels and Russians like horrible devils doing all of the horrible things, and Ukrainians never ever would have done that because they are good, they have values and others not. This is absolutely stupid thing and primitive. I will tell you that in such a scale of a population of militarized people who often find themselves in the circumstances that have no control over them, percentage of these people will be always prone to use this uncontrollable and the possibility to avoid any kind of punishment for what they would do. They do these things. They do crimes. They do war crimes to civilian populations. And I can practically guarantee you that there have been war crimes from both sides in this war. From Russian soldiers, from Ukrainian soldiers as well. Because unfortunately, that is how our human nature, our human psychology is fucked up. There's always, even in a healthy population, there are percentage very small of people, of psychopaths who will do these things. But in these conditions of war, these people, and even technically normal people, they are much more likely to do this shit. And depends on how well the commanders can control this kind of crimes, it will be in lesser or bigger proportions. We just don't know that. We have no way to check it. But I guarantee you there are some horrible things like this happening in the war from both sides. It's just because how fucked up we are as humans. So we just should try to do anything possible to finish and to accelerate the end of this war as soon as possible, to avoid more unnecessary victims among civilians and among military people as well, because most of them are normal guys who just would very much prefer to live a normal civilian life instead of killing each other.
Many of the guys I talked to, they said that they felt a need to enlist when their homeland was invaded by Russia. I think this powerful motivation partly explains why they've been able to hold back an adversary that outnumbers them sometimes 5-1. I expected to meet with a lot of poorly motivated and exhausted soldiers because they're now reaching the 1000th day of the war. But this was not what I saw. I saw disciplined, squared away soldiers.
Look, it is absolutely correct that the powerful motivation is what was letting the Ukrainian soldiers, a lot of which are really heroic, to resist for so long. And especially this kind of motivation was something very strong in the beginning of the war, where indeed a lot of volunteers have enlisted to the Ukrainian army. But almost 3 years have passed, and a lot of these highly motivated people and heroes are long gone because they are either dead or injured up to the level that they cannot keep on fighting. That's why Ukraine was constantly dropping the age of conscription, and right now thinking about if we should or not start bringing in 18-year-old kids, practically, which are technically adults, into the army. That's why. So the motivation right now is, in general, is absolutely not the same that it was in the beginning of the war. Because why? Because Ukraine is losing, or for basic reason of a very vastly different resource base between Russia and Ukraine, even with all of this NATO help, which cannot outproduce altogether the Russian military machine right now. So talking about motivation only in such an inspiring light is not a full picture. On the other side, if everything is so amazing with motivation, the question is why, even according to a Western mainstream media, there is only officially was more than 100,000 desertions. That means that unofficially probably realistically it could be perfectly twice more.
Not like the Ukrainian military held their punches either. They didn't just show me parts of the front that are sunshine and rainbows and quiet. They brought me to the worst parts of the country where often they're losing. Their soldiers almost universally expressed to me that they were well aware of this reality, that they're losing ground, even that they're losing the war, and that the tactical picture for them isn't good. Despite this, almost all the regular average infantrymen that I spoke to expressed their desire to continue fighting.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy how this task and purpose guy is failing to conduct even the basic elementary analysis of what he was experiencing, because, come on, he was interacting first of all with elite troops of Ukraine who are indeed highly motivated. I'm not saying that there is no highly motivated soldiers in Ukraine, definitely, and they are the most well equipped, the more highly motivated people, so it's normal that. What do you think? Would they let you to speak to the soldiers who are thinking about that this war is a total waste of time, money, and the most important, lives, and that they don't want to continue this war, and that they think about how to run away, how to escape the trenches? Do you think these people who was with you would let you talk to these kind of unmotivated soldiers? In all of these frontline spots where you have been? And even if they would, do you think an average soldier would confess to you, a pro-Western American journalist, that, yeah, I mean, the situation is fucked. We are losing. I don't know exactly for what am I probably gonna die. And to be fair, I want to just get the hell out of here. Like a lot of my other millions of compatriots who are right now drinking coffee in Vienna and Barcelona and Paris or Berlin. Of course not, because if they tell you that, what do you think will happen to these soldiers when their commanders will get to know what exactly they told publicly about how horrible things are and how unmotivated they are? These soldiers can't even get killed, I don't know, whatever. So how would you expect the truth from the soldiers who might absolutely not feel so amazingly motivated? And again, let's get back to the European press about, like, very recent article about the situation with how you describe amazing motivation of Ukrainian soldiers. So here we go. It's from Euronews, the article, and it says, facing every imaginable shortage, tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops, tired and bereaved, have walked away from combat and frontline positions to slide into anonymity, according to soldiers, lawyers, and Ukrainian officials. Entire units have abandoned their posts, leaving defensive lines vulnerable and accelerating territorial losses, according to military commanders and soldiers. Some take medical leave and never return, haunted by the traumas of war and demoralized by bleak prospects for victory. Others clash with commanders and refuse to carry out orders, sometimes in the middle of firefights. I don't know, maybe you forgot to visit these kind of soldiers who gave their anonymous reports to Euronews. So I guess the main problem that I have with this video is that it's basically a propaganda. It's promoting somehow the help and support for Ukrainian, hoping I don't know for what. But in a practical aspect, what this is doing, the promotion of so-called support of Ukraine, which in my opinion is not a support, is basically killing them. Yeah, what in reality is doing, it's prolonging the suffering of people. First of all, of people from Ukraine. It's prolonging deaths. And this famous quote, I don't remember from whom, like fighting till the last Ukrainian man, that's probably what you are promoting. You're promoting the pushing into the Zelensky to the lowering the conscription age to 18 years old. You're promoting catching the young guys from the streets and sending them to die while they don't want that. That is what you are promoting. And of course, it's not gonna be your brother or your son who will be dying there for nothing. It will be Ukrainians. Probably most of Americans, people who are actively pro-war, don't care about the lives of Ukrainians, because only this way I can explain such a big so-called support, which is indeed, it's making a little bit more damage to Russia in the expense of Ukrainian lives. In the practical aspect, it's like that. Why? Because there is no strategic way to defeat Russia. Just because of that it's a nuclear power with a huge military industrial base. And it's showing off on the ground. And if the West is stupid enough to push real limits of strategical safety for Russia, there will be nuclear exchange. I am like very horrified by the people who say like, oh no, Putin would never do that. That would be a death sentence for him. Hell yeah, but that will be a death sentence for every one of us as well. Because Putin already told once that if we have a world, like, why do we need a world which has no Russia in it? And you better listen and take serious this threat. So instead of burning human resources in the war that realistically cannot be won by Ukraine unless NATO will be directly involved and we will have a World War III, it's very immoral thing to do. We should stop this right now, as soon as possible. Yes, the terms are not gonna be favorable to Ukraine, but hell, because we are not living on a rainbow. We live in the real world where the biggest powers with the biggest resources dictate their terms to their weaker neighbors. And this clash of strategical war between West and Russia, well, better don't let it reach the levels of escalation that we all would regret.